In coastal Maine, something more mysterious than fog lingers on a rural country road.
This area of Maine is notorious for thick, dense fog. A person could easily get lost in it.
Legend has it, within the fog appears a ghostly bride.
Fog is one of the most notable characteristics of the ghost's appearances. She now stalks the road, sometimes headless.
And if passersby don't pick her up, it just might be their last trip on Blackwoods Road.
When he saw the car, my dad knew that nobody could have survived that crash.
She was in the middle of the road and she was looking right at me.
She got in the back seat of the car, and then she disappeared.
On the southeastern shores of coastal Maine lies a small remote area locals call Down East, an isolated New England region that appears to be stuck in time with its old buildings and tiny streets. But hidden deep in the woods lies a long secluded stretch of road where one of Maine's most famous legends resides, the ghost of Catherine's Hill.
Just about everybody has heard some version of the legend of Catherine Hill or about Catherine's ghost, and some people will avoid driving the Blackwoods Road at night. The remoteness, the isolation is definitely a factor in that, and meeting up with Catherine's ghost on the
road. Growing up, Angie Hall heard all about the legend of Catherine's ghost while spending her summers with family, not far from Blackwoods Road. But one night, this legend hits a little too close to home when Catherine wanders off the road.
I would have been 19, and my cousins, Brad and Crystal, were staying with us. I've always had a great relationship with them, so they used to sleep in my room. That night, as I get into bed, I fell asleep right away. Not sure how long I was asleep, but I just felt the presence, the being stared at. And when I opened my eyes, Brad was inches from my face.
Oh my God, Brad, you scared me.
I'm really scared. Can I sleep with you?
It was clear on his face that he was upset about something. He didn't look like himself. He was just clearly scared.
What happened?
He just crawled in and he snuggled in between the two of us. I tried to sleep at that point, but it was just too crowded. And I eventually got up and went to his bed just to give myself more room. When I got up, there was fog outside on the deck, and I just kind of looked at that, but I didn't really think about it. That morning, I got up and had breakfast with the kids. I said, Brad, what happened last night? Why were you so scared? And he said that he saw a girl on the deck.
What did she look like?
She's wearing a white dress.
My jaw just hit the ground.
Having grown up with the tale of Catherine's ghost, Angie knows Brad's description of the young woman in a white dress all too well.
Brad wouldn't have known about the Catherine Hill legend, but I instantly knew and believed wholeheartedly that Catherine was hanging out on our deck.
Ghost stories are easy to come by down east, but the legend of Catherine's Hill is one of the most infamous. In a place as close-knit as this, everyone has a tale to tell. And local historian Kathy Upton has been telling stories of this area's history for decades.
I am the second generation to be president of the Historical Society. Down east has always fascinated me. It's an old-fashioned way of life. A lot of the old homes still there, still intact, and still look the same as they did 100 years ago.
Encompassing more than 2,200 square miles of land, Down East hugs coastal Maine from Penobscot Bay to the Canadian border, which, as local meteorologist A.J. Burnett knows, can make for very unusual weather conditions.
The weather here is so incredibly unique because it changes so quickly. You have a coastal climate that'll knock temperatures back, and extreme cold can be a problem. Down East Maine is really susceptible to fog. This fog can last for anywhere from a couple hours to a couple days. So when it comes to weather, it's a whole bunch of extremes.
This unpredictable weather may have something to do with why Down East is one of the more secluded areas in the state.
Down east is isolated compared to southern Maine and other parts of the state. You'd see a lot of trees, beautiful scenery, some farmland, small villages, small towns.
In a place as remote as this, there are only a few ways in and out. One back road that locals use is Route 182, known as Blackwoods Road.
Blackwoods Road, as we call it, starts in Hancock and runs through to Cherryfield. It's pretty much open wilderness, and you literally wind around Fox Pond. Then you travel up Catherine's Hill.
During the 19th century, the road was named for Colonel John Black, a shipbuilder and large manufacturer of lumber.
Colonel Black, he was the overseer, the supervisor of the laying of that road. He thought that it would benefit both settlers and merchants if they had at least some sort of a decent roadway down east.
Nowadays, the road is mostly traveled by nature lovers and hikers. But back when the area was settled, the road was used mainly by lumberjacks.
There were vast amount of virgin forest here that had never been touched. A lot of pine that would be cut for the mast for the Royal Navy. So, lumber was king.
It's during these days on Blackwoods Road when the legend of Catherine's Hill was born.
The legend of Catherine's Hill revolves around a very misfortunate accident.
Many believe in the early 1800s, a young newlywed couple met their death here. And now, the young bride's restless spirit haunts these woods when a thick fog rolls in.
The legend of Catherine's ghost, fog, is actually a character in this legend and can mean the difference between life and death.
If you see Catherine's ghost on a foggy night, be warned, you might not make it off Blackwoods Road alive.
The area of Down East Maine was settled more than 200 years ago. And the legend of Catherine's Hill is almost as old as the settlements themselves. No one is exactly sure who Catherine was in life, but almost everyone around here knows of her in death.
It is pretty easy to find somebody in the area that had an experience with Catherine. Most people won't even drive the road at night because they're so afraid of it.
I know people say that they have seen somebody there. That's a bad place to be out alone by yourself.
Stories do have a propensity to travel quickly down east, despite the secludedness of the area. Most families have been here for generations.
Ties run deep there. Family, home. It's not at all unusual to have 2 or 3 generations fishing out of the same village.
Fishing and lumber are common professions down east, that date all the way back to the 1700s.
The fishing industry is doing very well, but back then, most of the industries were lumber related. Everything was cut with a buck saw or a cross-cut saw or an axe. I mean, there were no power tools in those days. It must have been extremely difficult.
It's a profitable business for those hardy enough to withstand the hard work and weather conditions. Maine can be beautiful, but it can also be cold, wet, and miserable.
Down East Maine can be a wet spot in the state. They average between about 50 and 60 inches of rain annually. We can get ice storms and snowstorms. Wintertime can be very, very cold and very brutal.
But no matter what the season, locals can always count on one thing: heavy, dense fog.
The fog can roll in rather quickly. You can go from a beautiful, bright, sunny day, and within 20 minutes, you're fogged in. Sometimes it's foggy for 2 weeks at a time.
Fog can be dangerous and mysterious, and it also plays a significant role in the legend of Catherine's Hill. As a local professor and author, Marcus Labrizzi knows a lot about this particular folklore.
One of the things I find most fascinating is how the stories keep getting predated in time. But the oldest account goes back to the 19th century.
According to legend, Catherine was a young woman in her early 20s from one of the small towns down east.
There's no descriptions of her husband, but Catherine's always described as actually quite lovely. Long hair, brunette, beautiful features.
On the day of their wedding, the young couple is anxious to start their new life together, oblivious to how short their time would be. As legend has it, the young couple are on their way to their honeymoon.
Catherine and her husband would have been traveling through the Black's Woods on an old stagecoach road, which is now Black's Woods Road. As they started to crest Catherine's Hill, a strange ground fog began to creep around them.
The fog soon engulfs their entire carriage.
Whoa, whoa! What started as just ground fog quickly overcame them, and they were probably traveling off to the edge of the mountain without being able to see anything at all.
And fog is certainly a complex weather phenomenon.
There are two types of fog that can form. There's radiational fog. The temperature's dropping pretty quick, and you start to notice maybe a thin layer of cloudiness forming right near the ground. Another kind of fog is advection fog. You get this warm, moist air coming up from the south that runs into these cooler ocean temperatures, and you can get these very thick fog banks just off the coast. And then a southwesterly wind carries that fog right up. That's advection fog. That's when it comes in from somewhere else and lands on you.
Being surrounded by so much water, the area near Catherine's Hill is very susceptible to advection fog.
Catherine's Hill is right about 960 feet in altitude. So the fog that forms on Catherine's Hill comes in off the Gulf of Maine and then starts climbing as it goes inland. Driving can be a real hazard because you may only be able to see only several feet in front of your car.
But back in early colonial days, something as odd and foreboding as thick, heavy fog often brought on superstition.
Fog masks things. Things become distorted in fog. And so I think that's part of the reason why the fog has this kind of mysterious allure. It's also become kind of culturally connected to the supernatural.
And it is in these conditions that Catherine's legend is born.
The fog not only prevented their visibility, but but seemed to have brought a kind of omen of something bad about to happen.
But in every version, there is one constant. Catherine is beheaded, and now her ghost is said to haunt these lands.
A lot of legends originate with death, especially traumatic death, and the recurring nature of the decapitation, certainly it's a motif we see in other legends. It's also very graphic. We tend to remember very graphic kinds of things.
Just like the legend, the stories of Catherine's sightings have several different versions as well. Some say they've seen her headless body on Blackwoods Road, while others say she wanders the woods intact, lonely, and forlorn.
Some people speculate that she's looking for her head. Others that she's looking for her husband. Perhaps, though, Catherine's just trying to find her way home.
While many locals are familiar with the story of the ghost of Catherine's Hill, Deborah Newell is one native who knew nothing of the legend until she experienced it firsthand.
My husband and I had went to a barbecue at his brother's in Bangor. It was getting late. He was tired, so I decided I'd drive. And within 30 minutes, he was sleeping. I'm driving through the Blackwoods, going up and down and around. Going through Blackwoods during the day is absolutely beautiful. But going through Blackwoods at night gives you an eerie feeling. The trees that hang over the road make you feel like you're closed in, and they feel menacing. But I wasn't concerned about anything other than maybe a deer popping in on the road. We were starting to go up that hill on the other side of the lake. And when I was driving up, I could see the fog. It didn't concern me. You know, there's fog in Maine everywhere at times. But as soon as I hit the crest, there was a woman in the road. She was in the middle of the road, and she was looking right at me. It was like she was made of fog. I could see her skirt was billowing in the wind. Her hair was flowing back. I didn't see any trees rustling behind her, but there was definitely a wind blowing on her. I just slammed on my brakes because I thought I was going to hit her. She was gone.
What happened? Why'd you stop? A woman in the middle of the road, I almost hit her.
And he says, well, where is she? And I said, she just kind of went off into the fog. But there was no fog left. No fog at all.
She was right there. She was wearing a long white dress.
That's when he told me, he said, you probably saw Catherine.
What,
Catherine, it's a local legend around here. A woman died here several years ago. And if you don't stop for her, then she puts a curse on you.
Oh, my God.
After that, I was just too shaken up, and I asked her, I said, you've got to drive. I can't do it. And I will never drive Blackwoods at night again.
Deborah and her husband are lucky. They only saw Catherine's ghost. But according to legend, Catherine's spirit can do more than just appear on the road. Some residents believe her ghost is seeking some sort of revenge. And if drivers aren't careful, she just might decide to hitch a ride.
She may just be looking to inflict some nameless, horrible vengeance on an unsuspecting passerby.
In the region of Down East Maine lies a small mountain known as Catherine's Hill. It's a nature lover's paradise and the birthplace of one of Maine's most famous legends about a ghostly bride who wanders the area when a dense fog rolls in.
She's looking for her head. Sometimes she actually has her head, but if someone sees Catherine and they don't stop and help her, then she will haunt them forever.
So legends are often located in places that are outside of the boundaries of kind of comfortable society. They're often located in these dark, often isolated types of places. And the legend of the ghost of Catherine's Hill is one of the most pervasive legends, often called the vanishing hitchhiker.
The legend dates back to the earliest settlements in the area, and many continue to be fascinated by the tale, especially since there have been so many sightings of Catherine's ghost.
The tales of Catherine's ghost have been around as long as anybody can remember, really. Sometimes she's headless, sometimes she's a hitchhiker. Sometimes people pick her up and then she's in their car and then she disappears. If you don't pick her up, bad things will happen, I guess. I've been lucky enough not to meet her.
I think you would be hard-pressed to find someone who's lived here for any length of time who has not heard the story of Catherine and the legend of Catherine's Hill.
Although some of the locals' encounters with Catherine's ghost happen near the woods on Catherine's Hill, many say she prefers to haunt the side of the road and ask for a ride.
Down East Maine is almost ground zero in terms of supernatural encounters. There are literally so many encounters with Catherine that you could literally fill a book with these stories.
In 2004, researcher Dennis Boyd was doing just that, gathering stories of Catherine's Hill for a publication on the history of Down East Maine. And one story he came across struck him as the most chilling he'd ever heard.
When I did my interview with Abby, she looked like she was in her 60s. Since the interview, I'm afraid she died. But Abby was 100% sure of what she witnessed. Abby said she was a young child and that she had gotten very sick, and her father decided that she needed to go to the doctor. They traveled the Blackswoods Road. They reached Catherine's Hill, and he saw what looked like fog.
Strange.
As he got closer to it, he realized that it was a form or a figure that was materializing in this fog.
I wonder what she's doing up here.
Assuming she's a real person, Abby's father stops to help her.
What are you doing out here? Come on.
He reached behind and flipped the seat forward so that she could get into the back of the car. The woman got in and they started off. He looked up in the rearview mirror and the woman wasn't in the back of the vehicle. She never responded to Abby's recollection.
My daughter, she's not feeling well. Can we help you out, or is there any place you want to... Miss? Miss?
Her father gets out of the car and runs around to the back seat. And what they see, they'll never forget.
There was nobody in the back seat.
Lean forward, darling. Did you see her here, honey?
She said she looked between the seat and he was brushing water off the back seat. And Abby said she saw a puddle of water on the floorboard where this woman's feet had been.
Sweetheart, lock your door, okay?
Years later, when Abby learned of the legend, she knew exactly who the mysterious woman was.
Abby concluded that she had experienced the ghost of Catherine's Hill.
With so many sightings of Catherine's ghost appearing in fog, many believe the two are somehow mysteriously connected. But meteorologist A.J. Burnett knows the natural mystery behind fog.
Clouds and fog are basically the same thing. They're just made slightly differently. It's all condensation. It's all water vapor that is in the air, and that air cools to its point of condensation. Clouds up in the sky are formed by rising and sinking motions in the air. When air rises, it naturally, most of the time, cools. So as you get higher up, that air is cooling. The water vapor then has to condense, and you form clouds. So it's slightly different flavors of the same dish.
While fog may be a natural phenomenon, it also seems to be a part of the spirit that haunts the hill. And according to legend, if a passerby sees Catherine's ghost on a foggy night and doesn't offer her a ride, she might just exact her revenge. And the amount of accidents on this stretch of road seem to confirm it.
The Blacks Woods Road seems to have an extremely high number of accidents that take place there. In the last 5 years, there were 33 accidents that took place on this road. Now, for some people living in large, congested urban areas, that may not sound like a lot. But one has to remember that this is an extremely remote road.
When a place becomes identified as haunted, or when a particular ghost or being is kind of identified as sort of existing in this location, then anything weird that happens in those areas get attributed, and that's also how the legend literally grows.
And one famous account stands out above the rest, that of a traveling salesman.
He was driving through the Blacks Woods when he saw a headless woman at the side of the road. In terror, he just sped past the apparition. And just when he thought he was safe, he looked in his rearview mirror and he saw that the Phantom was sitting in his back seat. Perhaps through terror, or maybe it was a bad heart. He lost control of the vehicle and became just another fatality of the ghost of Catherine.
The story of the headless passenger is tough to prove since there are only two witnesses, a ghost and a dead man. Still, that doesn't stop this creepy tale from being locals' favorite account of Catherine's vengeance. But there is one deadly run-in with Catherine's ghost that does have a witness. And by his account, he's lucky to be alive. But another motorist wasn't.
He said the shivers, the chills just went up his spine. At this point, he was extraordinarily frightened.
200 years ago, a legend was born in the mountains of down east Maine. Many believe after experiencing treacherous fog, a young married couple crashes their horse-drawn carriage and dies on Blackwoods Road. Now, a ghostly bride haunts the area.
I drive over Blackswood Road at least 2 to 3 times a week. I think the fog probably has a lot to do with the legend because it is kind of creepy and scary.
There's an abundance of Down East legends around here, and I know that Catherine is one in particular that people embrace. I've never had an experience with her, but I know that other people in the area have.
It's not unusual for drivers to cross that part of the road at the peak of Catherine's Hill and find something much more than they bargained for. David Whitney was born and raised in Down East and heard many renditions of the legend of Catherine's Hill. He believed it was nothing more than folklore until his own father, Dale Whitney, had a run-in with Catherine's ghost.
Dad played in a lot of different bands over the years until he died just last year. He knew of the ghost of Catherine, but he was a very pragmatic person and fairly nonchalant about the ghost of Catherine's Hill. To the top of the hill, that it was even more foggy. He saw a woman standing in the road, and she was waving him down. He cracked the window just a little bit, just enough so that he could speak.
Need help?
And he said that she was wearing this long white dress, and it was waving as if in the wind, but there was no wind. And she said, "I just want to ride to Bar Harbor." And he said that the chills just went up his spine. And he said, I looked at her and I could see through her. And I was scared out of my wits. That's exactly what he said. And he said, I rolled up the window and I just sped off. And then Dad started feeling this tremendous feeling of guilt, that maybe this was a woman that needed help. And he felt that maybe his eyes were playing tricks on him. He said, I just can't live with myself without going back and seeing. But he went back up over the hill to talk to her again. And there was no woman. She was gone. And there had been no other traffic. There was no way that another vehicle had come along and picked her up.
Hello?
Backed up, and he showed his lights into the woods and up and down the road to see. But there was no car, and there was no woman. The woman was gone. He was extraordinarily frightened. He was convinced that he had seen the ghost of Catherine.
But it isn't until later that morning, when David's father is taking his usual route on that very same stretch of road, that he realizes he may not have been the only one in Catherine's sights.
I remember him telling me that there was an accident and the wreck was there, but he said there was no car where this accident was the night before. So whatever accident occurred after his encounter with this woman.
Perhaps this motorist also encountered Catherine's ghost, but wasn't quite as lucky.
It was a bad accident. My dad knew that nobody could have survived that crash. He was severely spooked.
Dale was fortunate that night. His decision to go back and check on Catherine may have saved him from her deadly wrath.
I remember he wasn't scared of anything, but he was scared of Catherine.
Even those lucky enough to not have crossed Catherine's path will soon find that this haunted stretch of road has something else in store for them.
People traveling through there encounter things. And that's perhaps the biggest indication that something is going on.
The legend of Catherine's ghost has been part of this remote section of Maine as long as anyone can remember. Pretty much everyone has their own story about a haunting on the hill.
About 10 years ago, I had written a play, and my mom and brother were coming up to see it. We're sitting around the kitchen table, and I'm telling my mom and brother about the story of Catherine. As soon as I mentioned Blackwoods Road, they looked like ghosts themselves. My brother says, okay, we're driving down the road, and we come through the fog, and all of a sudden, my mother turns to me and says, did you see that girl standing there by the side of the road? Until I'd mentioned Catherine's ghost, my mother and brother had never heard of the story. They went white.
But who exactly Catherine was in life is up for debate, or if her name was even Catherine at all. Some wonder, was the hill named after Catherine, or is it the other way around?
When I was researching these legends, I almost assumed that the ghost was called Catherine because she appears on Catherine's Hill, and that might not have been her actual name at all. Perhaps Catherine's Hill gets its name from the spirit itself.
Regardless, no one argues that strange things always seem to happen on this part of Blackwoods Road.
I know there have been different stories about cars running perfectly, and then all of a sudden, as they drive by or over the hill, that things are not working right and they have breakdowns or they have issues. People swear there's something wrong with that hill.
There's absolutely no cell phone service up on top of Catherine's Hill. Electromagnetic disturbances happen and unexplainable mechanical difficulties that indicate that there's a kind of electromagnetic force field up there on top of the hill. Now, we do know that the area has geographically an incredibly high concentration of quartz, and whether that is responsible, I don't know. People traveling through there encounter things, and that's perhaps the biggest indication that something is going on.
Marcus Labrizzi has even had his own strange experience on this isolated road.
I was driving through Blackswoods, and I was in a brand new car, and I was probably going about 45 miles an hour, and just as I was cresting Catherine's Hill, all systems shut down. The car completely stopped and stalled. And then I just turned on the car again, and it was fine. And I realized that this was not just an isolated occurrence. Perhaps it was a form of a supernatural encounter.
Whether Catherine is causing these disturbances or not, there are people today who still believe the fog on Catherine's Hill is more than just condensation. They continue to try and make sense of this mysterious presence.
Fog is one of the most notable characteristics of the ghost's appearances in terms of eyewitness accounts that I've collected, and even in terms of the legends that circulate around the area.
For the legend of Catherine's ghost, fog is actually the primary force that ends up killing Catherine. So it's a character in this legend. But also, fog is sort of a metaphor for all of the kinds of major weather in this area and the impact that weather can have on people's lives, to the extent that it can actually mean the difference between life and death.
And to those who live down east, the legend of Catherine's Hill is more than just a story.
I think actually the people here in Down East are kind of proud of that legend. It adds a little mystique to the area. It's a part of the fabric woven into the lives of people that live here.
Residents here have accepted that hidden within Down East's vast forests, isolated townships, and thick fog banks lies a mystery.
My own suspicion is that all the stories of Catherine are but a mask to put a face and a name on a phenomenon that has persisted in Blackwoods longer than anyone can remember. Something happens there, but the unknown is always the true source of horror and terror and fear.
Perhaps no one will ever know the truth behind the ghost of Catherine's Hill, but her legend is bound to continue for years to come.